So we're going to annoy, frustrate, and potentially trigger some users, but also cause some intrigue and interest for others.
Yeah, this is gonna, if you are feeling sentimental about your apps, stop listening now.
Yeah, we're gonna have a fight with like everything. For those unfamiliar, I posted a video on my tech related channel about money and Obsidian and sync and finances and the longevity of applications, which is what we'll discuss to start with. But I also am working on a video on another channel of mine, which has no videos on it at the moment, so I'm not going to plug it at all. And I don't actually know when the video is going to get posted because I want to try and edit it. Like, not just cut it up, but actually edit it. And that's talking about Notes apps as glorified word processors. So they're the two topics of conversation today. I'm just going to put a bit of a starter in there. Yeah, so Obsidian and money. John, I want to hear your thoughts on my video in a little bit more detail. Like, I know we've just briefly discussed before pushing the record button, but for those that weren't listening and aren't familiar.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, so from my perspective as the businessy person, like getting, I know of a lot of clients who would benefit from it, but they probably won't use it, even though it is for vast majority of people free. But it is that additional cost of sync, which is included in most of the other apps. That I think is the punching post, the bit that kind of stops people from can stop business owners from using Obsidian. Why would I use Obsidian when I have to pay for sync? Yeah, it's free, but then you've got all these additional costs and et cetera, just to have it across devices, and I don't like that, so I'm not going to use it. Whereas, I've got Asana and I've got Trello and I've got Notion can do it all and it doesn't cost me a penny. And so that there is like immediately why a lot of business owners probably won't see the value in it, especially as when you look at Obsidian, when you first start diving into Obsidian, it's like, okay, well, how is this any good? It is just a document with documents on it. It's not exactly, not wanting to touch into the next one. Like, I can do this in Google Docs. What's so magical about it? And when you first interact with Obsidian, it's like, well, yeah, it's not shiny and pretty and like getting everyone's attention like tools like Notion is and all of the other beautiful apps that are coming out. It's not as, I think it looks gorgeous, but that's beside the point. It's not like just the visual style, but like it's not flashy. It's not flashy like Notion is.
My brain likes to go in different directions when we're speaking about things to help me remember what it is, because I build
Yeah.
up an environment in my head. My brain, for whatever reason, decided to go into the trenches of war, right? Why? I don't know.
I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, how do I make this? Why is my brain going here? Why is this making me think of the war and trenches? I see Notion as sort of like the helmet of a person. It's sort of like it's the first thing you see, like going over like trenches and stuff. It's protecting you, sort of thing. And then I see Obsidian as the stool. Like you need to use the stool to get up, or you're like clambering to get up over the trenches. Like that's what I had in my head. The analogy I had in my head. It's like Obsidian's like a stool. Like it's just there. It exists. No one really knows what it like.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, and
it just
that's the thing. And it's so like when I'm
it just
talking to people, they're like,
disappears.
well, so I went to a retreat late last year and I was in Obsidian. I was using Obsidian for everything. And I showed people what I was doing. They're like, wait, what? Yeah, but how's that? I didn't know Obsidian could do this. I'm like, well, it can, and more.
And that's what I mean. Like you look at a stool, you look at a bench, you look at a chair. It's like it's got one thing. I stand on it or I sit on it, and that's it. And this comes back to ecological dynamics. It's funny. I had a lecture about this, and I second year uni. My lecturer said, what can you do with the chair? And you sit on it. Yeah, if you ask a 4-year-old, it becomes like a base. It could be the top of a rocket. It could be anything. And that's how I see Obsidian. Obsidian is this bench. It literally does one thing, but it does that thing really well, which is be a bench. In Obsidian's case, be a text processor, word processor. But if you have the imagination, you can do anything with it. Yes, like Notion, but not to the same extent as Notion.
Notion, you always have to have these like, oh, but you can't really do this. You can sort of do this because you can sort of manipulate it here and tweak it there, and you're going to have these things here. All these things that most people don't understand or want to understand. You have to have those things you don't understand, which increases that like, this is too much work. This is too much effort. This is too much to think about.
And this, I think, is interesting. So I'm going to do another video. I don't know whether the video will be out before this recording, but I was listening to the Cortex podcast. And for those unfamiliar, that is GCP Grey, big YouTube creator. He's like a cartoon person on YouTube. You can look up the channel. And he speaks with a co-host, obviously. And they discuss apps, tools, loads of other things. And like yesterday, so as of like 26 hours ago, something like that, they released an episode. And the co-host has been using Craft for about a year. Right? They use Notion, and he's been using Craft, while GCP Grey has been using Obsidian. And Grey has been trying to get the co-host onto Obsidian. 2 months ago, he onboarded him to Obsidian. And the conversation was amazing. I'm going to, like I say, put clips of it because it's like a 2-hour podcast. So I'll take clips and put it in a video. But in a nutshell, he said, the guy that moved over to Obsidian said, the initial wall was like, I don't really know, I don't really like it. But now he's like, I can't understand why I wouldn't use it.
That's my experience. It was exactly the same. Like the barrier to entry was massive. Like it felt insurmountable. It's like, yeah, but the amount of freedom was just overwhelming.
And one point that stuck out to me, I mean, it's a really small point. It was kind of like a footnote sort of thing in the conversation. I probably won't include it in the video. But he was saying that, I wanted fonts that I liked, so I imported Apple-based fonts onto the Android phone and put it into Obsidian, which you can't do in Craft. And he was just like, I want it to look like this, and I want it to look like that. Yes, they like the minimal theme because it makes customization easier. Yeah, I think that's subjective. Minimal does make customization of the theme easier, but it adds more buttons that I don't think many people need to start with, unless you're a really aesthetic person and want it to look a certain way. But I just found that really interesting that once he'd been onboarded, once someone had sat him down and gone, okay, here's basic stuff to get working, he started using it, and he was using it not for what you would think, not for, it's Obsidian, he was writing a script or he was planning out a book. No, he was planning the release of a product. He planned the release of a product inside of Obsidian using the canvas. So he had his notes on the project, on the product. He had the notes on the story of the product, why it would be used, past costs of different things, and it was all in the canvas in files. And he said he's never seen an application that does this. Now, I don't think it was the mind map thing that he was talking about. I think it was the files inside of a canvas.
Yeah.
In any way you want.
That's always been my problem with mind map software. It's like I want to go deeper into it. When I use Whimsical, I used to create multiple boards and you can link to boards. Whereas in Obsidian, I can just have a note and have more stuff with notes and notes. It's just so much quicker, so much easier. And I'm just in there, done. I just drop it here, and it doesn't really matter how it's organized. Whereas with and that's something that I'm slowly getting, like, I'm kind of rethinking it of like, I have to organize it in a certain way, otherwise it won't work. But you don't have to, because it takes so little to change it. It's too easy to change. too easy to change. And it's so flexible and allows you to design it how you want to be working and what you want to be working on, which I think is why it's so overwhelming to start off with, because in the industry I work in, most people don't know how to be productive. They don't know how, because they think they have all of this stuff put on them on what it means to be productive. And I think this is kind of links to something that I've been thinking about, because of course, as of the time of recording, GPT-4 has just been released and everyone's going freaking insane about it and how amazing it is and how it
Bing.
creates coding and blah and Bing and blah. And I am this close to switching to whatever that Edge. I'm this close to switching to Edge, and I hate the fact I'm this close to switching to Edge because Bing is really damn good. I don't want to do it, but I am so close.
Just for reference, everyone, I've been using Edge for just over a year now. And I've been using Bing as my main search engine for about 9 months as well, because Edge just defaults to Bing. And from my experience, I know this could be controversial, Bing's better than Google. Now, the reason I say this is because Bing is mildly faster. It's kind of like the Obsidian v Notion speed sort of thing. Like, Bing just gives you results a little bit quicker, like Obsidian and Notion. Not like, it's not exactly the same, but Bing is faster than Google. Plus, you don't get the ads. Like, I don't think I've seen an ad on Bing, like, at all in the last 9 months. Like, I don't think I've seen, like, inside of my search results, I don't think I've seen one. They just don't appear. And you get all the Chrome extensions that you want inside of Edge. So you're not losing anything out there. And when I use Bing, it gives me what I want. Like, I don't have to scroll 2 or 3 times. And with Bing AI, I mean, Bing AI is just a whole other thing. But I mean, I scroll up on my mouse wheel, I get AI chat. Like, I don't have to go find it. I don't have to load it. Just scroll up. And if it can find something really quick, it throws it at the side of a search. So I don't even have to scroll down and look through the links, which is why Bing AI is nice. And Google obviously doesn't have any of that
yet.
Yes. And it's funny, I actually have a Bing chat up at the moment because it's relating to the conversation we'll have later on. But going backwards slightly, back to this podcast, there was this conversation between Gray and the co-host. I can't remember the co-host's name. And it's interesting because Gray was saying, well, this co-host was talking about, to start with, attachment files and saying that images are annoying, and he didn't know that you can have a default attachment folder. Gray was just like, oh yeah, that's a setting. And he was like, oh yeah, I found it. Oh, that solves my problem. Never mind. And I feel like that is Obsidian uses in a nutshell.
That is Obsidian. That is Obsidian. It's like,
I have a problem.
I don't like this. Here's a plugin. Or, oh, it's actually here. There you go. I'm like, oh.
It's like, you just need to find the button, find the setting, or whatever. So.
Which is in itself a kind of pain point for many people. They don't want to think. So I kind of get that, I guess.
Yeah, but the other point was, this co-host was saying, my folders are getting too hectic. I have too many folders and I need to search through them all. And Gray was like, yeah, but you don't need to. It's like, yeah, I do. I need to search. It's like, no, you just learn how to switch. He was using the Finder, and I was like, what the Finder? Oh, quick switcher. That's what you're talking about. He was referred to it later on. I was like, okay, you're talking about the quick switcher. You didn't know what the word was. Fine. And I was like, Gray evolved whilst using Obsidian from searching through files and folders to just using a quick switcher and finding stuff that way. And he was saying to his co-host, like, you will just start to just switch and search between things rather than actually looking for them. And Gray says he's got loads of folders, but he never looks at them. He never opens them because he
I don't.
Searches.
So what I have now, because of course I've updated mine a little bit. Now I'm slowly so I spend most of my time in Vaultcraft now.
Oh.
Because I just can't be asked to switch to the other one. Because the things that I'm interested in doing are all in here, which is the researchy stuff. Because all of my business has taken a very big backseat, which I'm now having to slowly bring back in again, figuring that out. New things emerged, figuring that out. Yay. And so, but when I'm in Obsidian, I now have a I love my massive 20 something or other inch screen. So nice because I can just see everything. I don't need three screens like you. I just have one massive four. There's four now.
Yeah,
Hang on.
I went from two to
Three.
four.
No, there is four because you got two screens. Yeah. Do you have four
Count.
screens?
I mean, technically, I've got six because I've got two laptops in front of me, but I don't turn them on. Well,
Okay, cool.
not all the time.
I have a nice big screen now in here. I mean, it sucks when I go back to my MacBook. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just like,
Going to work is so painful. I only have two
I
screens
bet.
at work.
Oh, I bet. I bet. Well, so I have workspaces plus plus, and I literally have I've got two bigger things that I'm working on. And they are using your like what you did in the past. I don't know whether you still do it, but you have literally just a separate window with on the left I have the actual paper, the thing that I'm writing, and on the right I have a bunch of papers that I've just put in there, and I'm slowly going to bring them over. And so I have two on each side. I have one which is business and neurodiversity, and then as I was going through my inbox, I think it was last week, I was just pulling all of the sources into a window on the side. And so when I want to, as in when I want to come in and just go and play and go in there and go through my sources more, I do that. And damn, going through my sources means I have like too many projects again, too many. I have so many projects every time I go through sources. I'm like, oh, well, that's another thing I could talk about. Oh, that's another thing I can talk about. Oh, that's another thing I want to talk. Oh, yeah. So fun, love that. And so I just drag the sources, and if they're like, so I've got two kind of projecty things that are going on. One is business and neurodiversity, one is self-organization. They could pretty much be the same project, but I haven't. There's something different there, which hasn't fully emerged yet. There is a difference for me there, which hasn't fully emerged yet. And so I'm waiting for that to appear. So sometimes the sources are the same, and so I just literally open the source in a new tab and then pull it over to the other side. And so I have the two windows that are just on their separate thing. One is the note, the other side is every single source on one section. And then, because this is the bit that makes me excited, I have the main window open, which has other projects. I have my home at the top. I would share my screen, but no one would see because it's literally massive. It doesn't do well on massive screens. It just doesn't. You'd see, but nobody else.
Yeah, I'll be like squinting at your screen going,
Yeah. It's like that
with my one working eye.
Yeah, exactly. And then I have like my home, which is my main canvas, which are all the projects there. And then I have two more blocks, which are just the projects. And those are other projects I'm thinking of or projects I'm actively working on. So when I open my window, I can switch between just having an overview by using Quick Switcher or by using Workspaces Plus. Or I can have the full experience with all of the notes on left-hand side, all the notes on right-hand side.
So do you have Workspaces Plus as like a ribbon button? Or
I have it as the default at the moment because I was still experimenting with it.
like down the bottom right where you go in and you can select
Yeah, switch between. So I have full home, and small screen home.
Right. Yeah, I have. I mean, I'm using Workspace Plus as well, but I use them as buttons in the ribbon because I'm like, I'm not two clicks. I'm gonna use a one click.
Oh yeah, I hadn't fully.
Yeah, I
got it into place.
The temp workspace save is an absolute lifesaver. I love it so much. It's a checkpoint, a check mark, because when I go in, so for example, when I'm context switching now, I say context switching, I'm not really context switching, but when I'm starting to do something on something specific, I don't have to remember what was up. I don't have to remember where I was because I just click the pencil button and it just throws everything up my screen. It's like, hey, this is what you were doing. And it's like jumping straight back into my environment of work. So it doesn't matter what vault I'm in. I click on temp and I know where I was. And
which one is that inside of Workspaces Plus?
Well, yeah, it's just a temp workspace I've made. So it's like I have a home workspace. Are you talking like buttons to push?
No, I know that's Commander, but
yeah.
how I'm intrigued to hear how you set up the temp workspace.
It's just a workspace that I've called temp.
And you basically just save it. Is that where the autosave thing is?
Yeah, well, I have mapped it to Control S. So whenever I'm working on something, I Control S in the temp workspace, and then it saves that workspace to temp all the time. So I just work in there, and then I'm like, okay, I'll save that workspace, and then I'll go out and do whatever. Most of the time I don't save the workspace, because as in like when I'm working in it, because I don't want to have all the things popping up. I just want to get back to wherever my like checkpoint was for the temp. That's how I treat the saves. Which, like, for example, when I'm working on a research project at the moment at work, I have, when I'm here, 4 screens. So I'll have Obsidian on 2 screens. I'll have the home dashboard with the sources. Then I'll have another pane inside of that window with the actual source. So I'll have one pinned, so it opens up in the second pane. Then on the other screen, I'll actually have my research doc, or the actual research file. And then I have the outline of the research file, which is pinned. And that's a bit of a setup. But it's not, because I just push the pencil and poof, everything's up.
That's really cool.
And what is amazing about this is all free. There's no cost to any of this, which is why I'm like, Obsidian is amazing. Yeah. The only like cost for users is learning how to do it. And that obviously brings us on to like onboarding conversations and things like that, which is where I think the TFT hacker conversation that I referred to in the video about paying for plugins, I think that is where I'm not personally, like, I understand the paying for plugins. I understand it from a developer's point of view. I understand it from finances, but as a user, I'm not sure, because I don't want to be restricted on my use of this free app. If that makes sense, I'm like 50-50. I'm like, yes, in one sense, but I don't like it in another sense. What are your...
Yeah, it's a tricky one, really, because at the moment it's all free for the vast majority of people. And I think there is I
guess it's kind of like Twitter.
It's very...
Elon Musk being like, you need to pay for this thing that was free. You know?
Yeah, it's very hacky at the moment. Like, I view Obsidian as a very hacky app. And it's very much like, it's not open source, but it is open source. And then
vanilla isn't.
The
vanilla Obsidian isn't open source.
Yeah, the vanilla Obsidian is not open source, but the rest of it is kind of...
That's how I want to treat it. I want to like, right, vanilla Obsidian and modded Obsidian. Like, they're the words that come to mind rather than core and community, because I feel like some of the core plugins are still part of like the community's work, because obviously some of them have been moved in. But yeah, in my head, I'm like vanilla and modded, kind of like Notion. You got vanilla Notion, which is what I was using. But yeah, anyway, Karen.
Yeah, and I think I don't know whether I would want to be paying for some of these. I like the donation model, and I'm trying. One of the things that I am definitely trying to do is, when feasible for me to do so, I will I donate to the plugin. I donated to OpenGate because it was amazing, and I love OpenGate because it is amazing. having ChatGPT or Elicit. And side note, have you seen Elicit 2.0? Have you seen like if you have access, I don't like you.
I don't know if I have access. I went into Elicit, I think it was yesterday, and I saw they'd changed stuff, and I was like, what's going on here? And I just did my normal search, but I didn't get to explore much because I was like mid-work. So why? Tell me. What
Yeah, so Elicit 2.0, they're doubling down on the questions, so that you ask a question and then it goes and searches papers for you and brings up actual answers, versus here are a bunch of papers that say things. And I'm like, oh, yes, please.
So like a text generator answer, but with like academic papers as references.
Basically, yeah.
So Bing AI, just academics, not web.
Basically, yeah.
Ooh,
I know.
lucky.
I'm like, now, give it to me now. I want it. I literally did fill in the form and go, yes, please, now, please, thank you, please.
please.
now, please.
It's like a child, like, give me.
It's really cool. So yeah,
I don't have that much of a relation with the Elicit team, unlike I do with like most other apps that I use. So I can't be like, hey, please. Like with the Obsidian, obviously I'm in the insiders, so I get all of the stuff with that. With Research Rabbit, when I was using it, again, like I'd speak with them, Well, that sort of thing. Morgan, obviously, like you gotta love Morgan. Um, but yeah, listen, mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's really quite exciting what they're doing.
yeah, sounds it. I'm gonna have to do a bit of a deep dive at some point, but I'm like swamped. Like my time blocking is swamped. If
Yeah.
I could, I'd work on all four screens at the same time, but I can't because I'm only one person.
Oh, the limitations of the human
I
shit.
need two more pairs of hands and a couple more eyes and then just go. But yeah, no, it's not possible. So the money situation when it comes to Obsidian, sort of rounding out this part of the conversation anyway, do you think they should reduce the sync cost?
I
He's waiting.
don't
There we go.
know. I don't know because from a user's perspective, yes, but from a developer's perspective, absolutely not.
Hell no.
Because because my biggest like
Concern.
concern with Obsidian is it's not funded. It is completely done by a bunch of people who are passionate about what they do. And if that passion wanes, what happens?
Mm.
Like, and that's the bit that makes me feel, oh,
I
what would happen?
I think that
What
conversation. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, what would happen if they can't afford to do it anymore? A good example of this is I backed and saw this yesterday. I love how it links. Love it. There was this game, kind of like almost like online forum role-playing game thing called Storium. And it was fantastic. Like you had these cards and you had to get to a positive or a negative outcome. And it was really fascinating. I really enjoyed it. Um, but it was all done via Kickstarter, so I backed it. And they delivered on their promise. They delivered on everything. But the they didn't keep developing it really because they couldn't afford it and had to go and get full-time jobs because the subscriptions that they were getting were not matching.
Yeah.
They weren't able to quit their day jobs. And so for me, from a developer's perspective, I would rather the app keep going and I keep paying that money. I mean, I pay, I'm not sure whether I pay the 8 or the, no, I do pay the reduced rate. Would I
Early
pay the
bird.
higher rate? I don't know.
Mm.
And
And
that's the question I have. Like, would I try and hack it with Google Drive or
I think that's the like I was trying to allude to earlier that but I didn't by accident because audio and stuff. But yeah, no, the interesting conversation for me is if you do have to like if you've got the choice, would you hack it or would you pay for it? A lot of people just hack it. A lot of people just I say hack it. They use a service. They use SyncThing or Dropbox or iCloud or Google Drive. A lot of people do that. And I pay for Obsidian and I would still pay for Obsidian. And the reason is like I use it, like I rely on it. It is my daily driver application. I would quite happily just give up my Spotify subscription for paying Obsidian. Like Obsidian to me
yeah,
is more
I mean,
important than
quite
that.
literally, Obsidian is one of those apps that I'm not gonna stop paying for. Like I bought, I think I did actually buy, I'm not sure whether it was a commercial or the other. I did pay for a license. I got the
Catalyst
Catalyst
maybe.
license. Because I'm like, yeah, I would rather pay for the Catalyst license. I will support them. And then I still have a sync subscription. And
Mm.
I've had some rough months, but one of the things that do not go down is Obsidian. It's like I'm still paying for that. That's not going. That is a non-negotiable for me
Mm.
because I use it across multiple devices. Maybe if I used it across one device, maybe I wouldn't, but then I wouldn't really need to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I
And that's the thing. If you're on one single device or you're on a laptop and primarily your usage is for the laptop and on the laptop and the laptop alone, then no, you don't really need sync. It is an optional feature. It
Hmm,
is optional, and I
an
think that's
add-on.
why they've done it that way. It isn't necessary. Unless you have multiple devices or you want to access it from your phone and your device, which, oh my gosh, yes, thank you. Mobile, yay. Um, and I suppose that is like that's it. It's
I think I think for me, I mean, I pay Obsidian a fair amount. I mean, I got 2 published sites. I've got a Catalyst license. I have a sync account as well. So yeah, I'm paying Obsidian a fair amount anyway. But even like for me, because I have so many devices, like I've got my phone, I've got my laptop, I've got my work laptop, I've got my PC, like, and then sometimes I use other people's devices. I just sign into my account and boop, it's there.
yeah,
Like I don't have to worry about if I do. So when I went to work, I needed to set up my Obsidian Vault on a work laptop, and all I needed to do was install Obsidian, log into my account,
yeah.
and it's there. I don't same sort of thing with the cloud, but Obsidian just works, just does. I don't have
It
to
has the
think.
power of the cloud without having to be on the cloud.
Yeah,
It is technically, I know, but whatever, semantics. But I have local and I have cloud. One of the things that I'm doing is doing some DMing for a local gaming thing.
I assume you're
And I'm
talking
like,
Dungeon Master, yeah.
yeah, it's a dungeon
Okay,
master. Yeah.
not DMing as like talking to people.
Ew, why would I do that? Yeah. So I am learning to be a dungeon master and like running TTRPG games, tabletop role playing games. And as I was thinking about how I would organize it when I get to a point of like, I want to run my own homebrew, as in homemade campaigns where I do it myself, what would I use? And Notion came to mind. And then I'm like, but if I'm downstairs at the place, I'm not going to have internet access and I'm not going to be able to, okay, so what's the alternative? Oh, wait, the only alternative is Obsidian because it's local.
Which is why there's like half a community inside of Obsidian for TTRPG.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know. I've looked and I'm like, okay, cool. There are so many things that I want to do in mind, and I made a tweet. I'm like, right, where would I start? Because if I don't, I will start with a beautifully created, fully made system that's pretty and everything. And I've seen the themes, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is cool. I'm like, no, I'm gonna basically not use it otherwise. And I think that is a thing with Obsidian in general. Is like and I think this is a problem with Notion too, to a certain extent, although everyone looks the same now. Like, it's that where do you start? I know Obsidian enough to be dangerous, but it's like, where do you start? So when I want to do things like, so for TTRPGs, where would I start? I could start with a very simple note. Obviously, that's pretty easy. But would that be enough? There are plugins I can use. And that starting point in Obsidian is like there are so many options. You see these fully created, beautifully designed systems, and you're like, where do you
See,
start?
that to me shows the issue with the. Actually, this is a good segue to the glorification of notes apps. Where do you start? With a file or with a page? Like that's where you have to start. You can't not start there, because you can't have information without a file to put it on.
Mm.
So what in my head most people look at is not where they start or where to start, it's where could I be? And that question, where could I be, has limitless answers because you could be anywhere and everywhere that you want. So we all know where to start. It's the bit in the middle that we struggle with. Is
Yeah.
how do I go from a file to something that works for me? And it could look like any of those things out there. And when I look at Notion and RemNote and Roam Research and Ample Note and Insert all the other note-taking apps in there, they are all pieces of paper on a computer that you type on. They are word processors. They are glorified word processors. And I was doing this mentally when I was reading through this Bing chat. I was like, okay, so the original. Actually, I can share this because there's nothing bad about. Yeah, there's nothing bad about this. Let's find the right screen. It's that one. So, for those on YouTube, you should be able to now see that this is the Bing chat. I said, "Is Notion a glorified productivity?" I said apps, but yeah, it was autocorrect. And long story short, it said it's a really good app. Notion's really good, and it's sort of like the all-in-one solution sort of thing. And you can see it's got some references in there as well to some blog that it found. And I was like, what are the features of Notion? And then it explains these features. And it says note-taking. Notion allows users to take notes in a variety of formats. So does Microsoft Word. Such as plain text. So does Microsoft Word. Tables. So does Microsoft Word. And Kanban boards. Not quite, but I wouldn't say Kanban boards are for note-taking. So I think this is someone just making the point that you could do it in Kanban boards, but I wouldn't put notes in Kanban boards if I was working with notes anyway. And then users can also embed various types of media, such as videos, images, and files. Microsoft Word can do all of that. So there's nothing there in the note-taking that Notion can do that MS Word, a basic word processor, can do. I'm like, right.
Oh, so I'm just reading the project management and I'm a little bit triggered. Sorry.
Yes, but then when you read the next bit, it's like project management, knowledge management, templates, collaboration, customization, integration. Like, okay, so as a note taker, it doesn't do anything more than Microsoft Word. So how is it different? Oh, well, it has databases, and you can do project management and task management in it. John, do you want to read out the next bit?
Not really, because it makes me angry. Project management. Notion's project management capabilities are impressive. It allows users to create tasks, assign them to team members, and to track their progress. I'm like, impressive. A little bit of that.
Yeah, but the thing is though, this is like Bing AI, and you could argue Bing AI, oh, it's wrong, it fabricates stuff. But no, that's not a straw man argument from an AI. That is a big part of the Notion community pushing project management. Like, that's where building a second brain, like all the templates are. It's all task and project management. You're like, but Notion hasn't added anything to the project management app space. Like, it's not difficult to find a link in Google Docs and put it into a project management app for wiki note style information. That's not difficult. So for project management, Notion doesn't really add anything. And for note-taking, Notion really doesn't add anything. Knowledge management, that's so subjective. I'm not even going to bother reading that one out.
I mean, Notion's knowledge management capabilities are what sets it apart from other tools.
BS. BS. It sets them apart as in doesn't do a good job.
It doesn't do knowledge management well. There's too much faffing.
And this is exactly what I mean by Notion is a glorified word processor. And I would have said Obsidian is the same. But the canvas changes my opinion a little bit. Because the canvas does more than what a word processor can do. Like,
yes.
In Microsoft Word, you can't get multiple files, put them on a canvas, mind map, whatever you want to call it, and then look between them all. And you can't get certain sections of a note file and transclude it into another file inside of a word processor. Inside of Notion, you can sort of do that with blocks and synced blocks, but I mean, you're really going to do that? No. But inside the canvas and Obsidian, you can do that and it's seamless. And it's just, there's a card, there's a card, there's a card. And you can link with lines and do loads of stuff as well with metadata menu, and by creating links, creating like backwards and forwards links, adding groups, information in there, use Kanban board-esque things inside of Canvas. Like, it's not just a word processor now that it has Canvas.
No.
Is it a glorified word processor if you remove Canvas? Yes.
Yeah.
If you put Canvas in there, I now think it's something a little bit different.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that.
if Notion had something similar and it wasn't just a whimsical embed, then you can make the argument. But
But
whimsical
it
is a
has
different app.
Mermaid.
Shut up, idiot. Um, and then
Just I haven't finished. Scroll back up.
okay,
Because one of them makes me annoyed. Like the thing that gets me is templates. Notion has a wide range of templates that users can use to get started quickly. They don't get them started.
no,
It doesn't work. That nobody uses the default Notion templates, and if they do, they are completely new and they don't and they're
never use it again.
awful.
I never use them again. Right. I can't remember the exact lines, but this is in the video that I'm currently editing. I just did the cuts. And it's like, essentially, I'm talking about the Notion marketplace, the Notion industry, and saying how it's split into buyers and sellers. And essentially, I was saying that buyers try to give you answers that they might not be able to give, and sellers end up with more questions. Like they buy something, but they end up having more questions than
Other way
answers.
around.
No. Oh, sellers have more questions than answers. Yeah.
No, buyers have more questions than answers.
Yeah, that's what I thought I said. Buyers had more, sellers. Oh, yeah. Anyway, buyers, people that buy templates, get more questions than answers from the templates.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought I said.
Yeah.
Just for clarity, you can show you can that just shows that we don't cut or edit any of this. I'm just like blah 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 blah. But yeah,
and I think this like going from my experience, because I was in the Notion space, we were both in the Notion space super early. Like in the public Notion space, I was super early as well, one of the first consultants. Thank you. But like it was I very quickly moved away because the moment like templates started to go, and this was before it got really popular like it is now. It's insane now. It's nuts. But immediately as I started to release these templates,
ads on the tube.
Yeah, I know, right? And it's like, yeah, but this isn't enough. Like the templates aren't enough. And that is why I moved away, which in reflection, I could be $10,000 a month as everyone talks about. But I'm like, yeah, but
you're going to sell your soul to Notion.
Yeah. And it was very weird. It was a very weird experience. Like as I was going through it and doing more stuff with Notion in that Notion space. And I quickly moved away because it's like, it's not quite enough.
Yeah, I would argue that the people that had expertise didn't get the skills from Notion. Notion wasn't the solution. They had the skills from either their own successful businesses, their own experience. And when they realized that and recognized that, and the industry, the Notion industry started to grow, they leveraged that in courses and in consulting. So everything that was publicly available was just technical Notion videos. There wasn't depth to the things that are actually being shared, which is why
that was the thing. Like I think I remember distinctly you, me, and Layla talking about that. Like they don't do well on YouTube. They didn't do well on YouTube when people like us who had the expertise were talking about the bits that are actually important. The videos didn't really do well.
When you look at what I would class the Notion Titans, I wouldn't say Ali's in there, and I wouldn't say Thomas Frank is in there. Like,
no, God, no.
At the start, I would say it's Marie Paulin, August Bradley, and unfortunately, Will Nutt. I'm not a big fan of some of Will Nutt's work on YouTube, but his work on the website.
I can't believe you said that publicly. I love that.
On YouTube, I couldn't stand his content. That's just my personal opinion. But on his website, it was amazing. Like his website was like the go-to place. And then another one is I'm not going to say their name, but Red Gregory. Like her YouTube channel was also really good. Like I would class them as Notion Titans. Red Gregory, Will Nutt, Marie Paulin, August Bradley. But once August had his course, YouTube sort of disappeared. You look at his channel now, it's a remnants of what it was. Marie Paulin, same sort of thing. Once she had the course, she focused on the course. That was the thing. And that's where the expertise is. It's Notion experts using their expertise. It's not Notion experts talking about how to build a database, how to do this, that, and the other. And that's where I think the difference is. And it's funny, when I asked Bing, like, what are the alternatives to Notion, right? It comes up with a load of notes apps to start with. Evernote, Google Keep, and you've got Roam Research, Obsidian down the bottom. Notion.so is also a recommended alternative. I'm like, it's the same frigging thing, but anyway. And then it's got Trello, Asana, ClickUp, Airtable, and Coda's the one that sticks out to me. But essentially in there, you've got notes apps and project management apps. And when I look at Notion, Notion isn't great at notes apps. Notion isn't great at project management. Notion is crap at being a calendar, but it's good enough at all of them.
Yeah.
But if you take that argument, I would argue ClickUp is good enough for all of them. I would also argue Coda is good enough, but it's not free.
Coda is expensive.
Yeah.
And I really liked Coda.
But the price,
but not that much.
Yeah. And if you really want to go like push to shove, Evernote is, I mean, that's now got expensive as well, but their homepage, that's good enough. Obsidian, if you understand how to use the tool, is also good enough. Trello is also good enough. So, I mean, my video is all about why Notion is so popular, but why is actually Notion sticking out more than any of these? I think it's literally because of the big push they got to start with. I don't think functionally it's actually any better than many of these tools. Hot take, maybe. It's, like I say, a glorified word processor.
I think that what Notion has over these other apps is that it draws a little bit more outside the lines. It's easier to draw outside the lines in Notion than it is with tool, and I'm being more specific to like Trello, Asana, and ClickUp to a certain extent. It allows you to draw outside the lines. You are much more in the lines when you're in Trello and Asana and ClickUp. Like,
I agree.
This is what it does. That is all it does. That is that. You will use it this way, and that is kind of it. Unless you are a technically minded human, you will not use it outside of that. And even if Asana isn't great and you don't like lists, you'll use it because, as you were saying, it is good enough. But what I think Notion has, and the only thing that it has, is it allows you to draw a little bit outside the lines, which is why I liked it.
I agree. And I'm going to stop sharing now, but you can see these questions that Bing's brought up that I think are interesting questions, and you can just go for days. Like, what are the benefits of using Notion? How I started using Notion, that sort of stuff. I'm like, so cool. But yeah. Diving down on a little bit there, I think when it comes to the how do I want to say this? Carry on speaking. What I think how I want to say this.
Yeah, I think. I mean, we dunk on Notion hard in this, because
it's popular.
It's got too popular. And a lot of the way that it's being spoken about is very much like so surface level that it abandons the point of why Notion was good in the first place, to me anyway. And this is obviously personal opinion, blah, 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 lots of bias, blah, 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 etc. Caveats, all that stuff. But the reason why I got into Notion and the reason why I loved Notion was because it allowed me to paint outside the lines. It allowed me to play with my productivity. It allowed me to do things just that little bit differently without having as many restrictions, which for me is what I needed, because most of the productivity advice out there, almost all, I would even say, is based around like you just put things in and you get stuff out, information processing. We could go on a big tangent on that one, but that's not today.
I think so. This is again something from the script that I'm going to just say because I'm workshopping ideas. Productivity apps are built for people that see themselves as unproductive, right? You don't go to a productivity app if you think you're productive. So the app marketing needs to find something that you think you can do better or you need to do. And I think that's what Notion does really well in its marketing. It makes you feel unproductive, so you need to do something, which, long around story, leads to you building and tinkering and fiddling around, productively procrastinating using the app. And that's what I think, that's one of the reasons I think Notion is so popular and it grew so quickly, is it makes people feel unproductive and productive at the same time. It's like, I'm productive because I'm doing X, Y, Z, but I'm not actually doing what I should be doing. I'm productively procrastinating, like, constantly. And Notion, it's not just Notion that does this. It's every productivity app. Every productivity app does this to some extent. They're like, unless like something like The Brain, which is an app that's been out for what, 17, 18 years, it functions. It does its job. It's a really good tool. But its marketing isn't to make you feel unproductive. It's just, we do this thing really good, move forwards, move forwards. And Asana, ClickUp, those sorts of tools they're not on the same level of marketing as Notion, because they just say, we get you to do your work. They don't say, you need us because you can't work. Like, not in those words, obviously, but there's no real messaging from ClickUp or Asana or Monday.com or anything like that where it says, you suck, come use us. And Notion isn't saying that, but the users of Notion, the community of Notion, are sort of implicit, like they're implying that by saying, I can do this in Notion, I bet you can't, sort of thing. Like, that's the undertone that I get. Yes, that's my interpretation, my perception of the information that's shared. But every piece of content, if you're a content creator, small business owner, or doing anything in sort of like productivity, it's, oh, Notion helps me do this, and Notion helps me do that, and I do this in Notion. Like, great, cool. I don't have Notion. How do I do it? And you feel like left out. Like, I need to use Notion to do this thing. No, you don't. They just happen to use it.
Yeah. And I think, and
I don't think that's Notion's fault. I'm just going to point. I don't think that's Notion's fault.
It isn't Notion's fault. And I think I was just looking at Obsidian, and I'm like, is any of the language on Obsidian talking like saying it's not enough, like what you have? And I'm like, oh no. It's literally, Obsidian is a powerful and extensible extension.
I don't have the site up.
A knowledge base that works on top of your local file, folder, or plain text files. It's telling you what it does.
Yeah.
Everything is connected. The human brain is not non-linear. We jump from idea to idea all the time. Your second brain should work the same. Pen to your notes, like it's literally just saying what it does, and it's philosophy.
But Notion is the all-in-one workspace.
Oh, shut up! It was never. None. I don't think any of the kind of head creators, so to speak, right?
The pillar.
I don't think any of them actually
believe that. No.
Any of them have ever said or believed that.
I mean, from my understanding and my watch time on Notion, which is a fair amount of time, it's not. Like, no one has said, like, Ali didn't say it. They didn't say it and mean it. They said it as the marketing tool. And this is one of my gripes with the Notion ads. When they first started sponsoring people's channels, I was irritated, one, because they were sponsoring channels that had nothing to do with Notion or didn't use Notion. Like, they barely use Notion. And they were saying that Notion's the all-in-one app or all-in-one workspace or all-in-one whatever. And then they say it's great for note-taking, project management, wiki, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's not an all-in-one. It's, you could argue it's a jack of all trades. It's sort of like good enough for lots of things, but it's not great at any one thing. And what Bing brought up in its AI responses, which I wanted to say a little bit, is Obsidian is a note-taking app that allows users to create notes, link them together, and organize them in a graph-like structure. And Roam did the same thing. And this, I think, is a massive misconception about what Obsidian and Roam and other tools like that do. Graph is a fancy thing. Like, it looks cool. Functionally, don't really use it. Not many people actually use the graph. If they're working, if they're actually doing productive work, I would argue they're not using the graph. People that use the graph, I would argue, aren't productively working. They're faffing around in a tool. They're productively procrastinating. Sorry for those of you that think sharing your graphs look cool. Yeah, they do look cool, but I don't care. I really don't care that you've just started Obsidian and your graph looks like everyone else's graph when they start Obsidian. Cool, great, you got dots and lines. What are you doing with it? Small rant there, but graph-like view is this thing that's labeled and plastered over Obsidian and Rome. And you're like, that's not what the thing is. That's not what the app is. That's not what the app does. It's a text processor. It's a word processor that does text exactly the same as Notion. And I would argue better than Notion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of these notes apps are glorified word processors. And I think the community reinforces that, which is why Notion at the moment is much bigger than the other applications. I don't think other apps will catch up with Notion because Notion is so big now. But I certainly see Notion falling a bit in the future when more people start realizing that Notion isn't great for some things. And when students, I think it's mainly students, because students, I think, are the big user base on YouTube anyway, because I can't imagine many like businesses being like, I use Notion like this. No, they're either creators or they're students. And I think when that world starts to shift somewhere, then we'll see a drop in Notion. I mean, you look at Ali, for example, he's moved out of Notion for his business stuff. He tweeted about it, 3 months ago now, testing Monday.com, testing ClickUp, testing Asana. Like, Notion just wasn't working. He's got a team of 15? I wouldn't say that's a big team. But if Notion's not working, like, what are they going to use Notion for? And when you look at other big teams, most of them move out of Notion. They move to places like ClickUp or Coda or Asana or Monday.com. And you look at the big channels like Mr. Beast, they use a combination of Asana and ClickUp. MKBHD uses Asana. A lot of other creators use either ClickUp or Asana. Not many creators actually use Notion for project and task management. They use Notion as like a put docs together, like SAP stuff and random script notes. But you can use Google Docs for that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what does that actually do? Would you actually use it for? And I think what people actually use it for is just sharing something with someone else, which Google Docs does really well.
Yeah.
But we need some videos of people telling others that. Yeah. Anyway, they're my thoughts.
Yeah, and I just agree. I'm just like, yeah. And I think
you're a sheep.
Meh. If I was a sheep, I'd disagree with you.
No, sheeps follow. They follow by example. They follow the leader. Follow the leader. Anyway.
My brain went there too, to be fair. Yeah, I want the conversation to be moving away from applications anyway.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it will happen, but I want it to happen.
No, I don't think it will happen. And I want to keep battering on that door until eventually it does happen. Because eventually people will move away from that. I hope so.
I think the users in it move away from it, but the beginner users will still look at the app. Like when you get introduced to something, you still want something quick, easy, simple. Just, I want it to work and go. And that is going to take a long time to shift because there are so many people talking about Notion as the go-to thing. And I don't think that's really going to change, to be honest.
No, the market is too ripe for money.
Yeah. I don't see Notion going anywhere, and I don't really want Notion to go anywhere because it is a good tool. It does do a good job in certain use cases. So yeah, it's kind of like I want to move the conversation forwards, but I want it to move forwards earlier on in people's experience.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you do that? Unfortunately, you've got to look good, have a big channel, and make a video that goes viral. so people listen. And that's just the way the world works now. Like you're not going to make an impact unless you've got a YouTube channel or some social media platform that makes a big spike in views, brings a lot of attention, and gets eyeballs.
Yeah. You got to play the game.
Yep. Which is what I'm going to try and do. Because I don't play the game well on my channel right now. I just throw out the real niche content that we talk about here.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I don't think I've got anything else to add to this conversation, have you? Well, at the moment anyway. Maybe like tomorrow, I'll be like, oh yeah, I should have said that. But
Yeah. I it's interesting because I've been considering like just touching on the like playing the game thing. That has been quite an interesting thing that's going through my head of like, do I want to play the game? Because I want to make an impact. That is what I want to do.
everyone like over 22, 23 wants to make an impact and have influence.
Yeah, of course.
But they don't really want to put the effort in. They're like, nah, it takes too much time and effort, but I want to do it.
Yeah,
like
and that's
like,
and like my brain is like, do I want to play? Do I even want to play the game?
It's a big decision.
Because it is a big decision and requires an awful lot of effort and a lot of like, you have to like my perception of it is you have to do things that aren't quite in alignment with the way that you think sometimes. So you've got to use the
you need to oversimplify to market. You need to oversimplify to market, but for those in the trenches, it's really painful to oversimplify. Like the title of the video, it was painful writing it, but I knew it would get people to click on the video and watch it.
And that's like my that's been my gripe forever. I know how I could do that. Like it's not hard for it. It'd be much easier to oversimplify. But it's also not easy to oversimplify because then you know all of the nuance that gets lost and you can see that nuance and it's like, no.
And this is literally part of the conversation of a video I'm working on at the moment. I'm draft 1 of the script. Obviously, John can have a look at the script. And those in publish...
Can't everybody else too?
As long as I've published it. Yeah, I don't remember when I last pushed the publish button. But yeah, so and I'm working on a script about creator responsibility, right? And there were a couple of threads, conversation threads with some of the bigger video essay creators on the platform. And they get loads of comments saying, couldn't you do a 10-minute summary? Couldn't you do a 5-minute summary? Why is this 40 minutes long? Why is this so long? Because there are so many friggin' nuances. That's why. And the video essayist doesn't want to oversimplify. And the reason they have 50, 60 references, I'm sitting at like 140. Why they have like 50, 60 references, because they don't want to just say something that doesn't have evidence, isn't backed, and could cause more harm than good. Sorry, Ali, I'm going to call you out here. You said evidence-based in the last 3 videos, and I haven't seen a single friggin' paper in the description. He puts the image on the screen. I'm like, yeah, but where's the paper? Like, finding a title is not as easy as you may think.
Yeah. And like, that is a huge, like, I am in this point now where it's like, okay, cool. I want to talk about these things. I know that they can have they made a difference for me. They made a huge difference for me. And so sharing that nuance and the conversations around, I mean, it is basically complexity theory and all that delicious, yummy, tasty stuff that is actually really cool that no one in the business world talks about because it's too complicated to talk about.
Go bigger. No one in... Well, actually, it's easier to say no one outside of the skill acquisition world than say no one in the, and then like list everything.
Yeah, okay. No one outside the skill acquisition world talks about.
Yeah.
I'm niching to my business stuff.
I was just trying to think like who actually speaks about ED apart from people in skill acquisition.
No one. I can't think of any. And I want to bring that to...
I want to be able to go, oh, these doing, but I can't think of any.
Yeah.
Ecological psychology in psychological lectures that talk about typically extended cognition or ecological psychology, and then A-level lectures where it's like a page in the book where you've got like A-level students going, oh yeah, I need to remember this fact for the essay and then I'll forget it once I've done the exam. It's like, it's not the same
and
thing.
like, how can I bring that? I suppose, what is the environment that I wish to, and I've been thinking about this. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's approach it from that perspective. Like, what is the environment I want to create? Oh shit. Some of it needs to be that like manipulation that I don't ethically like. So I'm like, fuck. That was my reaction.
So that was my problem about 9 months ago.
All right.
Right. And I'm just gonna say my solution to this was just do it in my research. Like that's what I did. I just do it in my research. I'm now at a point where ethically I've understood my position better. I now have rationales behind all the reasons I do that I'm happy with, that I'm satisfied with, which is why this channel is now moving forwards with the actual video. Because I'm like, I've accepted that I know I'm going to piss people off. I know I'm going to frustrate people. I know sharing my opinion is going to trigger some conversations that I may be uncomfortable with. And I know I'm going to be vulnerable by sharing my opinion. But ethically, that is exactly what I need to do. Because if I don't, well, then I'm doing exactly what I'm trying to fight against. So I need to share my opinion. My problem with that initially was, okay, if I change my opinion, how do I share that in the video afterwards?
That is where my brain is. That is where that is the stopping point for everything I'm talking about right now. Like I start and I'm like, yeah, but if my opinion changes, oh shit. And how do I
the way I've dealt with this is because I'm treating my essays like an academic article. Again, in my head, I'm like, oh, well, that is my thought at that time. This was the evidence I used. And what I can then do in future is do exactly what the academics do and say, I now have other evidence which has changed my opinion, altered my perspective, and now I think this. And because of the framing of the video as a conversation and an opinion, it's not a fact, it's an opinion about pieces with evidence. Because I'm citing the evidence, I'm sharing an opinion, and I have a direction. It's like I'm one side of the fence, I'm not sat on it. I can argue against myself. So I'm deliberately not sat on the fence. So if I do change my mind, I can argue with myself. That's how I've got around it. Like mentally in my head. I mean, yeah, there's some mental gymnastics in there, but you need to do some of that sometimes to really crystallize your philosophy of practice.
I've been slowly going through that process myself with like not sitting on the fence, even though I see both sides so damn clearly a lot of the time, which has always been a struggle. I'm like, okay, so this is my opinion, but I see the other view, and actually there's evidence for that view as well as my view. And so the constant battle of like, oh shit, like
something I've thought about doing, right, is have an argument point and do one video arguing one side and one video arguing the other side. That's what I thought about doing. And I was like, actually, you know what? I can do that. This is where the idea came from in future. I can do that, but I can do it with a more educated opinion in the future, rather than trying to push them out at the same time. So I may have like 2 months. So I'm doing a video about Notion at the moment. I may in 2 months do another video about Notion, but from the other side of the fence, arguing the other perspective.
Yeah.
How that turns out, how it works out, I really don't know, but I'm enjoying I'm enjoying the editing process. I'm enjoying the process of making this video higher quality because I'm not fussed about the timeline or anything like that. I'm just doing it. The only issue is because I've recorded at my sister's room and her computer is much louder than mine, audio is a pain in the bum. Because he's got in the background.
Descript.
How How is
Descript has very, very nice studio, something called Studio Sound, which removes 90% of every horrible, annoying noise in the background, and it makes it sound really good.
I'll give it a listen. I'm using Fairlight at the moment, and it does again a really good job. I just need to understand the tool a little bit better because Fairlight is a professional audio editor.
Yeah.
So I need to understand what buttons to push and stuff. So it's like I want to learn the tool anyway, just in case I want to add some audio effects later on. So it's like
Fair enough.
two birds with one stone. But I'll still have a listen to Descript and see what it does with it. But yeah, I've just done the first like A-roll cut of cutting stuff together. And I was like, I gotta get rid of some of this, so I just put a noise reduction effect on the audio, so I don't have it like blaring in my face at the moment. But yeah, in future, I think I'll like move the mic, take the mic in, and just put it in front of the camera and do it that way or something. Because yeah. But anyway, I think that closes us out. If anyone's got some opinions they want to share, let us know. And I will read the comments. Just don't expect me to respond to all of them because yeah, it's hard.
That's some deliciously long comments, which we love. Thank you. But also, replying to them is hard because there are so many things to reply to. So please do keep sharing. We do read them. Even I read them.
Okay, I was going to say it does take time.
Yeah, we do read them. We do read every comment.
Right. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you or we'll speak to you next week.
Yeah. Bye.